Hello, my name is Father James Mary. Thank you for joining us for this 33-day preparation for consecration to Jesus through Mary, our Mother. As we prayerfully prepare for the historic rededication of England as the Dowry of Mary, we invite you to join us here each day for a short reflection and prayer. Day 32, Saint Pope John Paul II. 3 words summarize what we learned from Saint John Paul II. Mother, entrustocration, and mercy. Let us ponder each one of these in turn. Firstly, Mother. Pope John Paul II's teaching on Marian consecration not only carries with it his authority as Pope, but also the authoritative weight of an ecumenical council, because he repeats and indeed deepens the Second Vatican Council's teaching on Our Lady. Therefore, his teaching actually constitutes the mind and heart of the Church today, and we should pay particular attention to this. What is the mind and heart of the Church telling us about Our Lady? It is pointing to Our Lady's maternal mediation. It is saying she is our Mother in the order of grace. It is proclaiming the good news that God has given us a spiritual Mother who prayerfully, lovingly attends to our growth in grace and in holiness. This new motherhood of Mary is the life of the Church, in the life of each one of us, and it is the constant, consoling, beautiful background to everything we have said about Marian consecration, or what Pope John Paul II often calls entrustment. Secondly, entrustocration. Seeing Mary standing at the foot of the cross next to his beloved disciple John, Jesus said, "Woman, behold your son." Then to John, "Behold your mother." These beautiful words summarize what we already covered in the last point, that Our Lady is our spiritual mother. But then we read the next verse. Then the disciple took her into his home. Here is the heart of our response to Jesus, entrusting us to Mary as our mother. We are to then entrust ourselves to her by taking her into our homes. In other words, we are to take her into our inner life, into all that concerns us. We are to let her into our joys and sorrows, our hopes and fears, our plans and activities. When we let Our Lady into our lives, when we entrust ourselves to her care, she intercedes for us, she consoles us and gives us courage and strength to unite ourselves more fully to Jesus' own consecration of himself for the life of the world. In other words, she brings us to the cross of Christ, which is the final meaning of our Lord's self-consecration. And she inspires us to spend ourselves for the salvation of the world, to take up our part in the work of redemption. As we take up our cross, as we live within Christ's own consecration, we may become spiritually thirsty, desolate, and tired. That is when Our Lady carries us to the pierced side of Christ, the fountain of mercy, where we find a ceaseless source of strength and of holiness. Thus, to St. John Paul II's mind, entrustment to Mary leads to our consecration to Christ. In other words, one might say it is a movement of entrust-accretion. Thirdly, mercy. Ultimately, Marian consecration leads us to divine mercy. Acts of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary lead to acts of trust in the merciful heart of Jesus. We see this in the story of Fatima and Pope St. John Paul II, and especially in the Holy Father's homily during his pilgrimage to Fatima in 1982, a pilgrimage of thanksgiving to the mercy of God and the Mother of Christ for having saved his life. In that homily, Pope St. John Paul repeatedly pointed out how Marian consecration leads us to the pierced heart of Jesus, the fountain of mercy. This connection is part of the will of Jesus himself, who said to Sister Lucia in 1936 that he wills the consecration to Mary's heart because I want my whole church to acknowledge that consecration that my mother requested at Fatima as a triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, so that it may extend its veneration later on and put the devotion to this Immaculate Heart beside the devotion to my Sacred Heart. Jesus wants to extend veneration and devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary because she leads us most perfectly to him and helps us to receive the infinite mercy of his Sacred Heart. I would like to invite you today to spend time pondering St. John Paul II's Marian teaching as it is summarized by these three words: Mother, entrust-accretion, and mercy. O Mary, give us your heart. Amen.